Welcome to Deep Roots with NaijaBabeInTexas. Today's episode is from Vision to Value, Unpacking Agile for Modern Businesses, or should I say just modern business. Whether you're in tech, retail, healthcare, or finance, where you have probably heard the word agile. But what does it mean to be agile in today's business environment? What are the common mistakes teams make? And how can leaders use the methodology to unlock value faster? So this is a wonderful conversation for me with an amazing guest that I have with me today. I have been in corporate America for a number of years, and Agile is always one of those principles or one of those methodologies, amongst others, that I've used. And I thought this conversation would be helpful, not just to professionals, but also to business owners that can help them, and even to leaders. You never know who this comes across that would find value in this conversation in order for us to be able to really understand what agile means. I think a lot of people don't really understand the concept of agile and how to use it efficiently, for lack of a better word. But joining me is a fantastic guest, Heidi Musser, trailblazing, an accomplished board member, board advisor, tech leader, and global speaker known for driving AI strategy, enterprise agility, and people-first innovation. She has a number of other accolades besides this, but we only have a few minutes, or should I say a short time with her today, so we really want to get into the details. She's a TEDx speaker and advocate for women in STEM, DEIB, and LGBT plus in tech. Heidi has led transformations across complex regulated industries. She believes that in modern businesses, people matter more than technology. And I would say I have that same belief that people matter more in any business that we are in. So let's dig into it. Heidi, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for the invitation. This is going to be fun. Thank you.
Yes. So Heidi, welcome to the show. And then let's get the audience to know you a little bit better. I know that I've given them a high-level overview of who you are and your experience. So please, can you share a brief description of your background? What drew you to Agile and business transformation work? And what's your current role and what do you find most rewarding about it?
I'm a native Detroiter. I'm a first-generation Title IX NCAA Division I collegiate athlete. But most importantly, I earned my bachelor's degree and my executive MBA from MSU, Michigan State University, so go green. I actually began my career in public sector finance, and shortly thereafter, I met the Rear Admiral Grace Murray Hopper. She was actually a keynote speaker at a GFOA conference in Detroit in the early 1980s, and she influenced me in a couple of ways, and this is important. Believing I could have a successful career in computing was a part of it, but a bigger part of it was this. During her talk that day, she said, "The most important thing I've accomplished other than building the compiler is training young people. They come to me and ask, 'Do you think we can do this?' And I say, 'Try it.' And I back them up. They need that. And I remind them throughout their careers to take chances." Yes, I met her that day. I shook her hand and she gave me both her business card and 4 nanoseconds. You'll have to know that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have one of them in my hand right now. Yeah. So shortly thereafter, I joined a software startup as your chief product officer, and I haven't looked back since. Yes, this was over 40 years ago when I learned my very first lesson about technology, and that is that people are more important than technology, and that is more true than
today. Mm-hmm.
Yes, in the age of AI. And to kind of wrap things up, I've actually had 6 different C-level roles. I've worked as a chief product officer, chief operating officer, chief information officer, chief risk officer, chief compliance officer, and a chief executive officer. So I've been around the block once or twice. But you asked the question, what first drew me to Agile and business transformation work? In a word, curiosity.
Yes.
I've always wanted to understand why. And yes, I was a very precocious child, a badge I wear with great, So my current role, I'm kind of retired, but I actually have 3 roles. I'm a board member, board advisor, and executive consultant. But most importantly, I mentor young people. I really aspire to be like Grace Hopper. I find it incredibly rewarding to teach people how to ask for help. And I believe that is the core leadership discipline, asking
Yes.
for help. Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. So today and every day, I'm reminded that I stand on the shoulders of so many amazing people, coaches, teammates, colleagues, BFFs from public schools, neighbors, mentors, sponsors, advocates. I fervently believe that we are all in this together and we have to give it away to keep it.
Well said, Heidi. Well said. And I would say you exude those words and those disciplines that you've learned, because I am an example of somebody who you've blessed in so many ways that I am so grateful that I have you in my circle of people that I can always call up on for anything. And I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you
for that introduction. So let's level set, right? So what is Agile really beyond just the buzzwords, right? What is Agile?
Well, just a little historical context. The Agile Manifesto was written in February 2001 during the digital revolution that began in the 1980s. And the problem we were trying to solve then was to deliver software that added value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We hadn't yet learned how to develop, test, and release software in small increments that we could test and learn from. Waterfall was the predominant software development methodology.
Yes.
So the core values that were actually laid out in the Agile Manifesto, they're still very relevant today. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and perhaps most importantly, responding to change over following a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Agile always has been, in my humble opinion, and continues to be about people. And what do I mean by that? People uncovering better ways of doing things and helping others to do it, and people responding to change over following a plan.
Would you also say it really helps with communication at the end of the day in bringing people together to be able to, I don't want to use that word change faster, but just collaborating a lot better versus using the waterfall methodology?
Absolutely. Collaboration. It's people working together and kind of going back to asking for help. We learn faster when we learn together. Myself, I do better when I pair with somebody, whether it's writing, delivering a talk, speaking, whatever. When I have somebody side by side with me doing something together, we bring different perspectives. We learn faster.
Yeah. I think it tends to help us with those social skills as well.
Absolutely.
Because people don't realize that, but there's value from those social skills in being able to really collaborate well, eliminating those leadership titles and just talking through how do we solve or how do we get something done, right? So
Exactly.
Why do you think, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do you think Agile is still relevant and still, and in many ways, essential for businesses today?
Yeah, you probably do know the answer. We live in a world of constant change, and no more so than technology. Accelerating rates of technology innovation continue, driving both customers and employees, people, to interact with each other and AI agents in new and unique ways. We're no longer in the digital revolution. We are now in the age of AI.
That's true.
And to really thrive in the age of AI, companies are going to need courageous leadership, a strong digital core, and investments in people to reap the value of technology innovations such as AI in a responsible way. And we're going to need to radically rethink how work gets done. And the focus needs to be as much as evolving our operating models and training people as much as on the technology itself. And I've said this a dozen times, even in the last 30 days, and companies will need to be agile. My experience is that organizations who have not adopted agile values, practices, and principles, not frameworks, okay, but values, practices, principles, they are struggling with AI transformation, and they will not be able to compete with the emerging AI native organizations. Agile is more relevant than ever in the age of AI. And remember, Agile, it's fundamentally about change.
Yeah.
And I've been saying this for 20 years now. Rapidly adapting to constant change may be the single greatest competitive advantage in the 21st century.
With what you said a number of things that really hit me. One is the ability to adapt to change. The second is agile is more important today. The third is just talking about AI in general and how it's going to impact the way companies operate. I find that in the number of companies that I've worked at, and one that you and I have worked in before, a lot of companies, they talk agile, but they don't really implement the entire principles, should I say, for lack of entire principles of agile in their organizations. And I always see them struggle to be able to get things done, right? They always feel like they need more people, but they have the tools that they need, but they're not using those tools efficiently to be able to get the work done. How are we really going to navigate that? Because I think that is, to me, the biggest struggle that I see from companies that I've either worked with over the years or friends that I know that have worked for other companies that really, really struggle with. They say they're using agile, but they're not really using agile. They're using pieces of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. Let me tell you a little story and kind of where Agile has transformed how a team or business delivered value, so we can contrast it with this. There are so many success stories about how Agile transformed a team
Exactly.
of 10 to 15 people. We have gotten really, really good at this. But think of the team, I live on the top of a hill overlooking a pond. And I'm always looking at the pond, and it changes every day. And some days I look at the pond and I see a very healthy lily pad. And we're getting really good, if I think of a team as a lily pad, we're getting really good at creating healthy lily pads, healthy teams. But if the pond is toxic, the lily pads will die.
That's true.
It's bigger than the lily pad. It's the system. In this case, it's the ecosystem. It's the entire business ecosystem. So, what's interesting is that, and I just read this in the 17th Annual State of Agile report, over 71% of companies use Agile somewhere in their software development lifecycle. Small organizations report strong business benefits, while medium and larger size companies continue to experience barriers to successfully scaling Agile. Why is that? Well, my hypothesis is Agile is a fundamentally different way of working, thinking, and being. And to be successful, everything must change, not just the development teams themselves. It's really acknowledging that the team, we can create a healthy team, but how do we fund it? Who has decision rights? What does governance look like? How do we interact with the business? I could go on and on and on, but it's bigger than the team. And today, so many people in the organization are involved somewhere in digitizing things in the software development lifecycle. So our businesses are not really modern. They're still structured to work the way technology existed 50 years ago in the 20th century. Remember when we implemented a new back office business system? And it was one. We did that every 5 to 7 years. My gosh, my iPhone's been updated to 39 times since you and I began this conversation.
That's true. Right? Yes.
It's a different world. So I think of this in terms of the ecosystem. We focus so much on the lily pad. We need to take a look at the entire pond and understand that this entire ecosystem is evolving. And until we acknowledge that, we probably will not, companies will probably not take those steps to address that.
Well said. So it's really the ecosystem in itself that needs to change in order for us to be able to effectively or efficiently leverage Agile. And it's, like you said, it's really important today, especially with artificial intelligence, because I get scared that we're focused more on the technology and not really thinking about the people. It goes back to that ecosystem. If that ecosystem is not changing and thinking differently, and not just looking for ways to get to that race quickly, right? Without really thinking through how is this going to be really efficient for the employees, for the business, and for our customers at the end of the day.
Exactly. I did something really interesting. I serve on a couple of boards. I won't say which board, but at the last board meeting, one of the things on the agenda was an update on AI. The board chair turned to the CIO and said, okay, we're ready for your update. So the CIO gave a lovely update about AI. And I said, thank you. I said, I'd like to request that at our next board meeting, the CIO does not give the update on the state of AI in this organization. And my colleagues looked at me and they said, what? I said, this is not a technology problem. Okay. AI itself is a disruptive technology, but what I would prefer to hear from is I'd like to hear from the people in the business that are experimenting with AI. I'd love to hear from them about what experiments did they run, what did they learn, what feedback do they need, and how we can do more of what works and do less of what doesn't. I want to hear from the people in the business and how they're using this and interacting, how we're using this to deliver value to our customers.
So it goes back to what problem are we trying to solve at the end of the day versus just trying to implement something just to implement it to say you're doing it.
Yeah.
Well said.
The CIO was not wrong. It wasn't about that. This is an incredibly competent CIO. It wasn't about that. But this is not, AI is not about technology. AI, at the end of the day, is transforming how we
processes
and deliver value. And we need to talk about it from a people perspective first, not from a technology stack. Now, you keep in mind, cybersecurity matters and hallucinations and quality and blah, blah, blah. That stuff is really important, says this retired CIO. Okay. It's incredibly important, but this is not a technology problem per se.
No, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. Okay. So do you have any success stories to share? I'm sure you do. About how Agile transformed a team. I know we've kind of touched on it during our conversation, but if you have an example for our audience, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a story that is in ways a success, but really focuses on some of the challenges that you're going to have to overcome in that success. So in my last role prior to retirement, I served as a CIO for a Fortune 50 company. And that's where you and I first met, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And shortly after I joined this organization, I was asked by our CEO to lead our enterprise Agile transformation journey. And you know me, I said yes because I do believe that Agile really matters. So first, let me tell you that we ran an experiment. We had a business sponsor who had some very difficult problems to solve to improve the delivery of value to our members, to the members of this organization. And she was willing to experiment in working in a fundamentally different way. So in this case, the developers sat side by side with the call center reps and were able to actually observe the impediments and the opportunities to improve the member experience. Well, I'm not going to go into the details. I won't tell you all the details of that journey, but I will share with you what we discovered. We discovered that collaboration is really hard to accomplish, especially in an environment that traditionally rewards individual heroics. In this organization, the culture of heroics ended up being the biggest single impediment to working in this fundamentally different way. And when you think about it, heroics don't favor flow, curiosity, autonomy, mastery, purpose, or the basic needs of people, needs like hope, trust, compassion, stability. Heroics end up creating untenable dependencies and tensions between the various parts of the system.
Yes.
Now, on a positive note, the results were great. The adoption of our enterprise agility core values at this $40 billion financial services company led to enormous improvements in speed, quality, and productivity. But I will also tell you, we didn't get it right. We very effectively created networks of competence within the IT organization. Think of lily pads. But these networks of competence, they were ultimately crushed by the traditional management structure, mindset, and practices that existed throughout the rest of the enterprise. So the bottom line is that we discovered that sustainable agility requires shared purpose and alignment across the entire organization. Yeah, that's the key. That's the key.
Well said. Well said. I think people sometimes forget that you can come in and implement anything, right? Make changes. But at least from my process experience background, to sustain it is really critical, right? It's a critical step. And if you cannot sustain the improvements, then we've all really wasted our time at the end of the day with the efforts that we've made to make those changes. But if that sustainment has not been really thought through, planned out, and implemented within the organization, because with every project, when you're done, you pass it over to the business, and they're supposed to take it over and sustain it. But if they can't sustain it, then they go back to where they started, because people, again, will go back to what's worked best for them. And if the organization has continued to encourage historic people who are heroes, who can go above and do certain things, then that's what's going to continue to happen. But my point is just sustainment is very critical to the example that you just gave. So
yeah. As we think about, even on a personal basis, these systems, companies are people. They're collections of people, right?
Yes.
So as we think about people, how do we respond to change? How do we, let's say our doctor says, you need to adopt a different exercise routine, even with the knowledge that we need to do that to stay healthy. How many of us really sustain it? Or maybe somebody says, you might want to think about modifying, changing your eating habits. How many of us really do that?
Yeah, it's tough.
Gosh, if you don't take out sugar, you're pre-diabetic. You need to start now.
You may have to cut off your leg or something. So you better, until it's critical. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So companies are really, they're not that different. It usually requires a tremendous, most companies don't have the courage to make the changes when it's easier to make the changes.
Yeah, because I think there's so many conflicting priorities as well, competing factors and all of that good stuff. But you really hit the nail on the head that it really starts with people, because even these same principles we're talking about from a business world, you just use the perfect example. It impacts us also in a personal perspective, right? So how do we manage change even in our homes, right? Or in our lives, because change is also going to be, it is part of our personal lives. So how do we evolve and manage that change? Is the same way a company is going to have to deal with that. It's really no different. It's just how are you going to do it to be effective, efficient, and things of that nature. So I think this leads us to the next segment of our conversation, which is really about leadership and culture. And I think we've touched a lot about this. And you made a point earlier that, Agile is not just, many people think like AI as an example is not necessarily IT. I look at it personally as really improving our business processes. That's just me, right? So for me, I also believe that it's not necessarily an IT software or an IT solution per se. It's really about how do we, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how do we improve our experiences and our processes to make our products more efficient or more effective within our employees that have to talk to customers, or with our customers who have to purchase our products or service our products, right? That's how I look at it. So, but many think Agile is just for IT, but how do we bring leadership and business teams into the fold, and how do we shift that culture and mindset for Agile to stick? because I think basically what I'm hearing from you, because we've kind of touched on this, is really about the people and the ecosystem. But how do we work with that ecosystem for them to, I mean, I know there are conferences that people can go through, just like the example you used earlier. You can talk, your doctor can tell you, you need to stop, you need to start exercising. But how do we get you to do those things, right? In order for it to stick within your organization?
Yeah.
Which I think it's a difficult question to ask, because I think
It
I
is.
to answer, because I think I understand just from this conversation, I understand it's really about the people. You have to have that willingness to do something, right? And if there's not that willingness to do it, then it makes it hard. But as a consultant, how do you help your businesses? Maybe that's a different way to ask the question. How do you help your businesses understand the value of Agile and make it stick within their organization?
That's the key question, and I think there's two ways to approach it. One is you invite them. Okay, you give them a seat at the table, you meet them where they are, and you listen. Okay, you seek to understand, not to be understood. And then you relentlessly focus on harmonizing alignment and autonomy. So there's a balance in there. There's a polarity there. Okay, there's a tension. Okay, there's enough autonomy for them to go off and experiment and try things, but it has to be aligned with the broader goals of the business. And the best way to get started with something like that, I like to say, run the experiment. Okay, run the experiment. It's just, it's like, hey, your business unit is operating at this level. Given all the headwinds and changes in the evolving environment, it's probably not sustainable. I'm going to encourage you and give you some time and money to run some experiments to see how you might want to do things. And that's kind of what Grace Hopper taught me. So here's an idea, you back them up. Ask them what their hypothesis is and why. Support them in doing the simplest thing that works. Put it into production. Get feedback. And if it doesn't work, then stop doing it. And if it does work, say, do I want to do more of this? And you just kind of repeat and repeat and repeat that, but run the experiment. And it always starts with empowering the people to be curious and run those experiments. And when they're running them and telling you what they're learning, we ask them what they need to be successful. You back them up. Okay. I would tell you that the primary role of an organization, you talk about leadership, it's to enable ordinary human beings to achieve extraordinary things. That is my favorite Peter Drucker quote. I learned that years ago. And, he had it right. What is the purpose of an organization role? Enabling ordinary human beings to achieve extraordinary things. So run the experiment, empower the people, empower the business unit to try some experiments and to come back with, hey, we need to make some changes here because this is what we learned with that experiment. So when I think about bringing leadership and business teams into the fold, leadership has to be empowered. Leadership has to be empowered. They just can't be running the business strictly by numbers. It can't just be about meeting today's numbers. It also needs to be preparing the business for the future. And, it needs to get them focused on creating value and give them some room to run experiments to learn. But you invite them in, you give them the seat at the table, and then you try to find that balance. And it's never perfect. It's like that playground toy, the teeter, the seesaw, balance. You're trying to find that balance between autonomy and alignment.
So just basically keep trying, keep testing,
just to
whatever. Just to learn.
Exactly.
Be curious, empower your people. And if you fail, that's fine. Whatever is not working, learn from it and move on to the next thing, right? And like you said, keep repeating the same cycle, especially for the things that are working well, and continue to grow. But allow for that curiosity and empower your people. But I really like the point that you made, that it's not just about numbers, because really this entire conversation is really being about your people first.
Absolutely.
Taking care of, I don't want to use the word taking care of your people, but just your people matter first. And because you need to enable them to be curious, you need to empower them to do the experiments, you need to empower them to collaborate, you need to empower them to change and to be curious. And so all of those things are important in order to embrace Agile. And it's a mindset.
Agile is a mindset, and
It's a mindset.
I talked about that in my TED Talk. That's almost 10 years old now. It begins with meeting people where they are. It's meet them where they are. And then the dimensions of that mindset are understanding, comprehension. Okay.
Yeah.
Understanding is about relentlessly focusing so you can understand. Comprehension is listening to understand, and the imagination, acting with courage. Think big. We don't think big enough, right? Think big.
Yeah.
But I would also suggest that Agile mindset encompasses 3 behaviors: asking for help, which is about humility, making mistakes, which is about curiosity and learning, and recognizing others. And this is really having compassion for people and the customers. And this mindset it's both thinking, but it's expressed in behaviors as well. And then slowly incorporate that into the broader culture. The bottom line, and people don't always understand this, but even that pond that I talked about, the ecosystem, culture is a part of the system, the business system. It's the glue that holds the system together. At the end of the day, culture, it's the behaviors, the norms, the values, the attitudes, the customs, the beliefs, the achievements. It's the way of life of the group of people in the system. So if you want to change the culture, you've got to empower the group of people in the system to behave in different ways. And we want to change the culture so that we enable ordinary people to do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm having epiphanies as we're talking. It's like, because it's not complex. It's really very, very simple. Treat others like you like to be treated, right? Listen to people, have an open mindset, engage with others, right? It's really that simple at the end of the day. And that's why you say it's part of our culture. It's part of who we are at the end of the day. Those things are also going to be important as to how we evolve that ecosystem, because if we don't have that, I have empathy for ecosystems in today's environments because there's so many moving parts. There's so many things evolving. Change is, like we said, is rapidly moving so quickly. And sometimes people just don't know how to just take a deep breath and try to balance everything out. And knowing that we don't have to solve everything right now, but we have tools to be able to help us collaborate, listen, and understand the problem we're trying to solve, right? Leveraging these experiments to be able to at least get us from point A to point B. But I think we live in a world now where everything needs to be done right away. We get information right now. And so therefore we need to get solutions resolved today. And we need to fix issues, right? Immediately. And I think sometimes we just need to take a deep breath and say to ourselves, we have the tools, we have everything that we need. How can we leverage the tools to be able to get us from point A to point B at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast.
Yes. You have to take some steps back, and get there. Okay. So my next segment was really about common pitfalls that people experience. And I think we've touched on that a lot, which is really about the ecosystem is what I'm understanding. And please, if there's anything else that we should add to this conversation, let me know. The ecosystem, just being able to listen, if you're not leveraging those experiments to understand what the problem is, right? And then to understand where we can, that if this doesn't work, it's okay. Let's try something else. And then if that works, let's keep trying it, right? I think from my understanding, it's really about how do we embrace a culture that empowers people. We're listening, we're getting our experiments done, those types of things. If you're not doing those things, your ecosystem is really the critical pitfall, I think, and the ability to change. And if you can't change, that's where you have to start from.
And I would add to that, that was a very nice summary. I would add to that on a more practical level, some real common mistakes are, I frequently see too much focus on the methodology and the tools.
Yes.
Like the framework. There's many different frameworks for adopting and implementing Agile. And I see too much focus on the methodology and the tools and not enough focus on the people. Okay. So I think that's one of them. That's a real common mistake with Agile. I think another common mistake I observe is metrics. It's not the story points. Those are simply placeholders for a conversation. The only metric that really matters is, are you producing something that is adding value? Are you creating your ability to create and deliver value? How quickly are you able to do that? So, those other metrics are interesting, but they're not
critical.
They're not the ones that make a difference. And I think that the third one, and I see that this is very common, and I think we've touched on it, this is not about teaching a team, a methodology of Agile. I think a real common mistake is that organizations don't necessarily acknowledge or recognize or respect that Agile is a fundamentally different way of working, thinking, and being. Therefore, everything must change, including probably the people that are leading the transformation. This is really, really hard. And I remind people that be patient. This is really, really hard. Okay? There's nothing easy about this. There's nothing easy about a 75-year-old company that has gotten really good at doing things a certain way to all of a sudden say, okay, let that go.
And start something else.
Something else. And by the way, you don't understand what this new thing is, so you really have to trust. Let that go. What does it take for us to let go?
Right? It's hard.
And somebody could be extending a hand and it's still like, yeah, I don't know if I should take your hand. What if you let me go? What if I slip? What if I letting go? You have to do something new. You have to let go of something old. That's also something Peter Drucker said. But you've got to stop doing something old in order to embrace something new. And that is really, really hard for human beings to do. So the common mistakes are, they're kind of simple. Don't over correct the methodology, right? And be careful with the metrics. At the end of the day, you're delivering value or you're not. If you're delivering value, customers are going to buy your product. You're going to make money. Everyone's going to be happy. If you're not delivering value, you shouldn't be in the marketplace, right? In Agile, it's not just the software development. It's a very different way of thinking, the mindset, and being and working. And a lot has to change, not just the teams, but everything the team interacts with has to also change. Governance and risk and compliance and funding and decision rights and all of that. It's and even who you hire. You want to start hiring people and understanding that, we work very collaboratively. Okay, you don't want to hire heroes. You might be tempted to hire heroes. Maybe they're really, really smart. Okay, but are you hiring? You're still creating teams. You may be the best player on the team, but you're still on a team. You're still a part of a team. So I think those are some of the common practical mistakes organizations make with Agile.
So don't hire heroes. Hire people who are collaborators.
Yeah. There's no I in team.
There's no I in team. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where really some of these compensation structures, right, come into play so that's why you're also saying the ecosystem has to change. Yeah. Like I said, I'm having a huge epiphany because I've never really thought of Agile as just a mindset, right? Yes, I have embraced the methodology, some of the principles, and it's something that's important. And I've seen the value of what it can do in an organization if it's done well, using the principles you've just said, which is really the people, the mindset, right? The collaboration, the not just metrics heavy, but really just are we getting to the results of what we're trying to accomplish and what's working well? And how can we continue to do that to be able to be successful? Right? Constantly learning, right? I also say eliminating all these titles, right, from the conversation and talking to people like we're people and all trying to solve a problem. So that's where that collaboration comes into play. And when it's done well, it's amazing and it's really great.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, it is really great. I mean, Agile in action, to me, it looks like feedback. Literally,
yes,
if I could only measure one thing to assess an organization's health, it would be I would walk around and count the number of feedback loops I observe. And why? Because this is where the learning takes place. It's through
yes,
feedback that we grow. When we know better, we do better. It's through
yes,
making mistakes that we learn and build resilience. It's through resilience that people build confidence. And healthy feedback loops are the basis of empowerment. They are more important than ever in the age of AI. More important than ever.
yeah. Yeah, it feels like it's just common sense, but it's not. It's beyond just common sense. It's being able to, because we're all individuals, we all think different, we all manage things differently. How do you then get everybody to then not necessarily think alike, but bring your own thinking into the conversation, right? And your own solutions, your own, I don't want to use the buzzwords, which are, being open-minded and all of that good stuff, being innovative, but just bringing yourself to the conversation and your own experience to the conversation. And then let's figure out how to add value to the business and being able to get things done. Right. So really grateful for this conversation because you really elevated my mindset. Right. And I hope the audience also gets their own mindsets gets to be elevated. It's not just checking the box of, okay, this is what we've been taught about what Agile needs to be. Yes, you're taught about something, but how do you implement it in the organization or in your life? Right. And really, it's really about being compassionate about the people you're working with or just thinking about the people and then opening up your mindset, right? And then getting stuff done. And to your point that you just made, getting feedback, constant feedback to really be able to learn from your experiences in order to move forward at the end of the day. Start small. You don't have to be perfect and learn from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
We should always be able to learn from our mistakes and know that it's okay to make a mistake. And that's really one of the great principles, I think, of Agile is being able to fail. I mean, we say fail fast, but just failing is okay. What did you learn from failing? And how do you then implement it in the next thing that you're doing?
If there's one word I'd like to eliminate from our vocabulary, it's failing. That has such negative connotations.
Yes.
It's like winning and losing. It's like, can't we just have fun and play the game?
Exactly.
It's not failing, it's learning. I was asked this recently, and, it's kind of advice that I give to people implementing Agile. I remind them healthy change happens when empowered people are talking about and working on the things that matter and learning together. Then and only then will a new culture emerge that fosters growth and drives innovation to deliver value. And the companies that are going to win in the age of AI, they're not going to be the ones that correctly predict the future. We don't really know where AI is going, but they'll be the companies that build the capability to adapt to whatever future emerges. And that's what Agile is about, the ability to adapt and respond to change. And that capability to adapt to whatever future emerges, it's about getting comfortable with uncertainty, and probably fast learning, autonomous teams, managing learning for, continuous learning, courageous leadership that absorbs uncertainty so that your people can thrive. This is really important. The real question for each of us is how fast can I build the capability to lead in a new world that's still this is moving fast. Yeah.
So Heidi, thank you for this very insightful discussion. You've really gingered me. Gingered me today. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm just grateful for the conversation that we've had because it's really about resilience, responsiveness, right? Providing value at the end of the day, thinking about our people and people first at the end of the day. And this is just, Agile isn't just a framework, it's a mindset. And so really unpacked what it means, how it creates real value in the business and how to avoid common traps. And so whether they're scaling Agile, whether it's AI, whatever it is, just know that there are, like you said, there are multiple tools out there, but Agile is really, I don't know what other word to use, but really a mindset. And we talked about so many different aspects of it that are really critical to help people to be successful. Whether you're a professional in an Agile role, whether you're a leader building products or servicing customers, there's value to this conversation as to how to effectively use Agile to be productive and efficient, and how to also be a champion of change, right, within our professional lives and also our personal lives, right? If we do encounter change, how do we deal with it and move forward from there? So really, thank you for this time. Oh, we've taken a lot longer than I thought we would, but it's really valuable conversation. And so I would say for those of you who want to connect with Heidi and want to learn more, visit her at HeidiMusser.com and watch the TED Talk. Actually, everything must change, including you. I watched that TED Talk and I was like, wow, I was inspired by it. So I know it will inspire you. And yes, I'm just going to leave it there. Otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit more than I need to. Again, thank you, Heidi, for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I've spent my entire life learning, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, the spiritual truth about change. And the bottom line is this: it's really not what happens to us, it's what we do with it. As the world changes, it's imperative that we learn how to adapt and respond to that change. It's really both that simple and that hard all at once. So, so thank you. Yes. I really hope you found this both useful and that it inspires you to embrace change. Thank you.
Yes, I'm empowered. So audience, you all need to be empowered by this conversation. I think you will be. So thanks for tuning in to Deep Roots with NaijaBabeInTexas. If this episode helped you spark new ideas or gave you clarity, share it with a colleague, a friend, a family member, and subscribe for more conversations that dig deep into conversations that drive impact in our lives and in our business, in our professional lives as well. So, and in our businesses. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you.
Bye.